Up next in the broadcast, amid pressure to keep the nation's reform drive momentum going and to replace those acts from the ferry disaster, the president appoints a new prime minister and an NIS director, one a former journalist and the other a career diplomat. The trial begins for the 15 crew members who abandoned ship before taking care of the majority of the passengers who died aboard the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry. The captain and 3 others face the death penalty if found guilty of murder. And new historical evidence shows that the Japanese government itself acknowledged decades ago that its claims to Dokdo Island were not worth taking to the International Court of Justice. Primetime News begins now.
Hello, everybody. This is Primetime News, and I'm Kang Chae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for tuning in. Well, after days of speculation, President Park Geun-hye has tapped a career journalist to be her new prime minister and a career diplomat to head the state intelligence agency.
Today's nominations are expected to accelerate the president's reform drive, and to talk about these choices in depth, our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-san is joining us in the studio. Welcome. And so let's profile these 2 nominations first.
Well, the presidential office announced that Moon Chang-guk, the former editor-in-chief at the Jungang Daily and head of the Korea News Editors Association, has been nominated the new prime minister.
With his remarkable insight and driving force, the nominee is expected to push forward with reforms in public service and rooting out wrongful practices in our society.
And as for the head of the National Intelligence Service, current ambassador to Japan, Lee Byung-gi, was named. The career diplomat's working style and deep understanding of intelligence and security at home and abroad were cited in his nomination.
So what standards were used to select these latest nominations, and how will these 2 fit in with the president's overall reform drive?
Well, President Park probably spent the past 2 weeks searching for a candidate who would not embarrass her with ethical lapses as her previous nominees have. Moon's integrity as a former journalist was highlighted in today's announcement, meaning the president probably thought he would face no conflict of interest in leading government restructuring and instituting sweeping reforms in the aftermath of April's ferry disaster. In President Park's likely move to strike a regional balance in appointments, she chose Moon, who comes from the central Chungcheong region. A number of her most recent picks came from her political stronghold of southeastern Gyeongsang region. As for the president's nominee to head the intelligence agency, Lee Byung-gi, a diplomat and not someone with a military background, was an expected choice after she picked her defense minister as the new security advisor.
So how do you think these 2 nominees will fare in their confirmation hearings?
Well, soon after Moon's nomination was announced, the opposition party talked about Moon's conservative views reflected in his past columns and questioned his abilities to unite the nation at a time of crisis. The ruling party, on the other hand, expressed hopes that Moon, if he becomes Korea's first journalist turned prime minister, would not hesitate to point out wrongs in society and bring about nationwide reforms. But so long as Moon's ethics don't get in the way, he may have a good chance of getting that confirmation. And probably a similar case for the intelligence chief nominee, although the opposition side cast doubt over how effective he could carry out reforms within the agency, being a close aide to the president.
And there are more reshuffles expected ahead. Who do you think will be replaced, and what will the focus now be?
Well, political observers expect the reshuffles to take place after President Park returns from her trip to Central Asia next week. It remains unclear whether the president will wait for the prime minister nominee to be confirmed to get his cabinet recommendation, or have the nominee take part in the decision-making alongside current Prime Minister Chung Hong-won. The latter would be to prevent a further delay in government restructuring she had promised after the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. It's speculated the finance minister, who also sits as the deputy prime minister, will likely be replaced, as well as ministers of security, education, and fisheries, all 3 who came under fire in the aftermath of the ferry accident. And to display her commitment to reform, President Park is also expected to replace a number of senior secretaries, including ones in charge of state planning, economy, foreign affairs, and education. As for her chief of staff, meanwhile, he's widely expected to stay put for now.
All right, good stuff as always. Thank you so much for that report, Yusan.
Anytime.
And in other news, the much anticipated trial of the captain and crew members who fled the sinking Sewol-ho ferry in April began on this Tuesday.
The captain and those in charge deny the charges, and as our Connie Kim reports, the first day of hearings was emotionally charged.
The first day of trial for the 15 crew members accused of fleeing the sinking ship focused on whether some, including the captain, would be found guilty of murder by willful negligence. And the rest are charged with negligence that led to the death of hundreds of people.
If the murder out of willful negligence is to be upheld, the causal relationship must be proved that passengers died because the crew members did not rescue them, although they were aware of the dangers of death the passengers faced.
The captain has denied the murder charges, saying that possible rescue steps were carried out during the sinking and that he had been rescued after no further rescue efforts were possible. Lee requested through his public lawyer that his charges be reviewed. The prosecution used video footage and communication logs between the ferry and the vessel control tower as evidence to back their case. And during the trial, there were some emotional moments, with the prosecutor on the verge of tears at one point while reading the charges and some victims' families visibly shaken. 2 to 3 more of these trial sessions will be held with no dates set yet. The verdict is due out at least before November, when the arrest period for the crew members are terminated. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
New evidence has emerged that shows the Japanese government acknowledged decades ago that its claims to Dokdo Island were not worth taking to the International Court of Justice.
And that makes Tokyo's current push seem a bit out of place. Yurian has the details.
A secret government report dating back to 1962 shows Japan knew back then that its claim to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island was not a case that could be brought to the International Court of Justice. In the report recently released by a civic group in Japan, Tokyo's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the Dokdo issue cannot be categorized as an international dispute, as it arose before Japan announced its compulsory jurisdiction over the island in 1958. The document added that territorial disputes only apply between countries that claim compulsory jurisdiction, but since Korea did not, it said the Dokdo issue cannot be deemed a territorial dispute. The transcript of a closed-door meeting between the then director of the Central Intelligence Agency of Korea, Kim Jong-pil, and former Japanese Prime Minister Hayato Ikeda in 1952 has also been made public. Ikeda told Kim that the issue should be left alone, since Korea is effectively in control of Dokdo Island.
This document proves Japan is making its claim while it knew from the very beginning that it was completely unjust.
The civic group wants to bring lawsuits against the Japanese government to make public documents related to bilateral talks between Korea and Japan to bring light to historical facts. Yurian, Arirang News.
South Korea has given a German needle company the green light to open up shop at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry announced today that Gross Beckert submitted an application last week asking to supply needles to textile factories operating within the business park. It will mark the first time for a foreign company to do business at Kaesong, and apparently this looks like one of the first moves to get more foreign involvement in the park so that there won't be as much of a chance for the North to just unilaterally shut down the complex. Remember back last year, 5 months of business were taken out of the calendar because of the North's decision.
It was a very long suspension for probably the longest for Kaesong. But I don't know if this is enough. I mean, this is just a sales office. And South Korea was actually looking for a factory, potentially by a manufacturer, so that it's safer for South Korean businesses there to secure their business.
Right. And Korea's unification ministry said that 2 other foreign companies have also shown interest in opening up factories in Kaesong, although they're reluctant given the uncertainty regarding the complex.
But we're going to have to see, though, because Seoul actually did propose a meeting earlier this week to North Korea, saying, hey, let's talk about the management of Kaesong complex. But North Korea being North Korea, no answer just yet.
Right, slow responses from there.
Of course. And staying with North Korea, an attorney representing an American who is recently detained in North Korea says his client was on vacation in North Korea, not there for religious purposes.
And Jeffrey Fowl was reportedly arrested in the north last month for leaving a Bible in his hotel room. In a short statement on Monday, Mr. Fowl's attorney said his client loves to travel and that his family was anxious for him to come home. It also said Fowl's family thanks to the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang for its ongoing efforts to secure his release. With Mr. Fowl now in custody, there are now 3 U.S. citizens being held in North Korea.
Curry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chae-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
LG Electronics has long been playing catch-up, and not exactly successfully so when it comes to the smartphone market. But analysts say its latest flagship smartphone, G3, could give LG a breather. Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
LG Electronics' newest G3 smartphone has garnered an explosive response from Korean customers, marking one of the best debuts yet for the electronic giant. Compared to the previous G2 model, the G3 doubled sales, with roughly 130,000 units purchased in a little over a week of its release. On the first day alone, over 14,000 smartphones were sold, whilst local and global competitor Samsung Electronics was only able to sell 7,500 of its Galaxy S5 smartphone. But what's behind this sudden surge for Korea's number 2 maker?
There are several reasons. First, the performance was enhanced with the UHD screen, and also the camera, with laser point focus, grabbed customers' attention. Secondly, Samsung's Galaxy S5 had lower than expected sales, while Apple's iPhone 6 will not come out until late in the third quarter. Lastly, the business suspensions for Korea's 3 major cell phone carriers were lifted, creating more sales.
U.S. information technology website GSM Arena ranked LG's G3 at the top of the list, beating out the likes of Samsung's Galaxy S5 and Sony's Xperia Z2. Other websites and magazines highly favored the G3's functions, especially the camera's definition and laser autofocus function. LG smartphone sales are ranked 3rd in the world, behind Apple and Samsung. But even with the hot release, experts say it won't be able to significantly reduce the sales gap with its top 2 competitors.
LG is expecting to sell over 10 million units overseas, but it will be hard to reduce the gap in the big 3 with just the G3 model, but it could be seen as a good starting point.
The G3 is scheduled to be released in 100 countries in late June. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korean singer Psy is back, and has he done it again? Gangnam Style, of course, took the world by storm 2 summers ago, and his latest track, Hangover, has burst out of the gate since being released only yesterday. Shin Se-min tells us more.
14 million viewers and counting. In less than 1 day, Psy's new music video Hangover has certainly garnered interest on YouTube. It features Psy and American hip-hop artist Snoop Dogg delving into Korea's unique drinking culture and shows them visiting a singing room, drinking hangover remedies, visiting a sauna, and of course, downing soju and beer. Any success with this video will be judged against the one that broke Psy out as an international star in 2012. Since it was released, Gangnam Style has racked up over 2 billion views on YouTube, earning the title as the most watched clip of all time on the video sharing site. And according to the British magazine The Economist, the time spent by all of us watching that video could have been used for other pursuits. The time spent watching the 4-minute, 12-second video over 2 billion times equals 140 million hours or 16,000 years. Had Gangnam-style viewers not been watching the video, The Economist says they could have built 3 ships or constructed 20 Empire State Buildings. Will we be talking about Hangover in the same way in a few years? Only time will tell, but Psy isn't resting on his laurels. He will release another single called Daddy this summer. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, on a different spectrum of the music scene, violinist Chung Kyung-hwa is one of Korea's musical legends. After breaking out on the international scene in her teens and having a full career, she's back for more. Arirang's Park Ji-won sat down with her to talk about her 5 decades in the classical music business.
Korean classical music legend Chung Kyung-hwa, who has been leading a successful career spanning nearly 50 years, recalls her first encounter with the violin.
What I loved about the violin when I started when I was 6 was the freedom. I felt that the instrument was very intimate, and it also presented a voice. And so from then on, it became very pure fascination for me.
Since winning the Levantry competition in 1967 at the age of 19, she has become one of the world's first Asian classical musicians to reach star status on the global stage. She also shared part of her music career in the Chung Trio, along with her sister cellist Chung Myung-hwa and brother maestro conductor Chung Myung-hoon.
I had a very, very busy career until I had 2 children. I was very lucky to have this active career as a young performer.
She's been hailed by fans and music critics alike for her passionate yet delicate playing that could resonate with almost any period of classical music, from Bach and Beethoven to modern composers like Stravinsky. She says her Guarnerius violin, which she acquired in 1983, is her voice.
This instrument is so human. Once I've been in touch with Guarnerius, there is nothing that comes closer to my soul than this instrument.
In 2005, she suffered a finger injury. Thinking her violin playing days were over, she began teaching at Juilliard and co-directing the Great Mountains Music Festival. By 2010, her finger healed, allowing her to fully return to playing on international stages and in charity concerts, such as the one she will perform at the Seoul Arts Center this Friday.
I started as a dream of having a big solo career, but it's not a single voice I am looking for now. It is harmonious voice. Unless we care for each other and find the voice of each other and tune it together, we will not find the harmony.
In addition to her China tour in October, Chung will also play at the Royal Festival Hall in London on December 2nd, on the stage where her international career took off. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now let's kick things off in Pakistan, where another violent attack has erupted near the country's busiest airport in the city of Karachi.
With more on that story, we now turn to Paul Yi at the news center. Paul, 7 more bodies have been recovered after militants stormed an airport terminal on Sunday. Are we merely seeing a repeat of yesterday's deadly assault?
Well, authorities say this latest attack, which was much smaller in scope and was likely in retaliation to recent military strikes against the Taliban near the Afghan border. The fierce gun battle had taken place early Tuesday at the Pakistani Airport Security Academy, but military personnel have secured the area and are now searching for the attackers. The training facility was under fire for about an hour after several armed men pulled up in a vehicle near Karachi's airport, while gunmen on motorbikes shot at police and soldiers. There have been no confirmed casualties or wounded, but reports say dozens of ambulances were rushed to the scene. All flights in and out Pakistan's largest city have resumed, but the army has locked down the surrounding areas. The Pakistani Taliban has yet again claimed responsibility for the attacks, which comes less than 48 hours after an all-night siege by the terrorist group that killed at least 35 people. Riot police and protesters continue to clash in Brazil with less than 3 days to go before the host country kicks off the opening match of the FIFA World Cup. In the country's biggest city of Sao Paulo, metro workers entered their 5th day of protest on Monday, even after a labor court ruled their strike illegal. Riot police armed with tear gas had to confront the striking workers who were demanding a 12% salary raise. Major subway lines have been closed since last Thursday, causing chaos and uncertainty. In Rio de Janeiro, outside a World Cup media center, teachers protested and rallied. Using the backdrop of international attention and public outrage over the billions of dollars spent by the government on the games, public workers have been demanding better pay and working conditions. Thousands of other city employees, including police and bus drivers in different host cities, have also gone on strike in the weeks leading up to the global sporting event. And finally, turning to the United States, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, has kicked off at the LA Convention Center for a 2-day run. The annual video game conference draws tens of thousands of developers, publishing companies, and industry heavyweights. But all eyes were on Sony and Microsoft as they unveiled the latest games for the next generation consoles. Andrew House, the president of Sony Computer Entertainment, promised fans big titles were in the pipeline.
The Destiny trailer that kicked off tonight's show is the embodiment of our vision. From its graphic fidelity to its dynamic social experiences to its deeply immersive gameplay, Destiny will help define this next generation of gaming.
Microsoft also had a strong showing, but the company's Xbox One is still lagging behind in sales compared to Sony's PlayStation 4, which sold more than 7 million units as of April. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Chen. Now kicking things off with football. South Korea lost 4-0 to Ghana in their final friendly match, raising concerns over their preparations for the World Cup tournament. Manager Hong Myung-bo came out and said that it's still too early to be disappointed and that they had actually showed improvements in organization. But his words couldn't hide the glaring issues. The defensive problems persisted with a hat-trick by Ghana sub Jordan Ayew further denting confidence in the backline, while the offense was yet again thwarted from finding the net. Now, Team Korea will have just over a week to work out the kinks before their first World Cup match against Russia next Wednesday. And moving on, basketball star Kim Min-gu's drunk driving crash not only tainted his career, it also hurt South Korea's chances at the FIBA World Cup in August. The good news is that Kim is recovering after a successful but grueling 8-hour operation on his hip and hand. But the bad news is that South Korea will likely have to replace the 23-year-old, dealing a, quote, grave blow to their preparations, according to FIBA Asia. For now, Korea coach Yoo Jae-ok will have to wait until Kim's status becomes more clear. And heading to the ice, the Los Angeles Kings dismantled the New York Rangers 3-0 in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The Kings center forward Jeff Carter's wrist shot goal in the closing seconds of the first period proved to be the winner in the shutout win for LA. Now the Kings stand just a victory away from lifting the Stanley Cup trophy, with Game 4 set for Wednesday evening in New York. And coming back home, let's get to Tuesday's top KBO matchup featuring the Samsung Lions and the Nexen Heroes. Now we go to the first inning. It's Nexen's Park Byung-ho. He slams a 2-run home run for his 4th straight game, hitting a homer. Now we go to the next inning. Samsung's Yamaiko Navarro brings 2 home to tie it all up. It's 2-2. Now Nexen gets the go-ahead with a Yoon Sung-min home run, but Samsung answers back with 2 more in the next inning, highlighted by Chae Young-woo's shot over left field. It's 4-3 Samsung. But both teams add 1 in the 6th, but Kang Jung-ho hits a solo shot to tie it all up, and the game ends at the top of the 9th due to rain, all tied up 5-5. And now let's take a look at the other game scores. We have LG beating Lotte 5-2. Meanwhile, NC beat Tusan 8-4, and Hanwha and Kia are still battling this one out. It's 12-11 Hanwha's up in the bottom of the 8th. Well, that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Earlier today, some areas in Seoul saw hail for the first time in 2 years. Wow.
That's strange. I didn't know about it. I was just stuck in this office. But our Kim Bo-kyung is going to tell us more. Bo-kyung, do give us the details.
Guys, some abnormal weather conditions we're experiencing in Seoul and parts of Gangwon-do province. And unstable atmospheric conditions will continue, leading to more showers accompanied by thunder and lightning. In fact, it looks like another 5 to 40 millimeters of precipitation will fall through tomorrow, but we won't be done with rain just yet, as more showers are expected to fall through Thursday. So it looks like it's time to get out our rain boots. At the moment, the nation is at the edge of a high pressure system from the East Sea. If you're headed out for a late night trip, be careful on the roads, as we're expected to receive more showers later tonight here in the central regions. Taking a closer look at tomorrow's ratings, Seoul starts off the morning at 19 degrees before hitting 28 in the afternoon, while cities down south make it to the mid-20s. Taking a look at other places, Daejeon makes it to 27 degrees, while Jeju peaks at 23. And that's all for now, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
Thank you, Bo-kyung. And that does it for tonight's Primetime News.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.